I'm a nasty woman because I am not afraid, and it's actually very important to me to correct myself when I screw up in my language and my dialogue and in my efforts to be inclusive in the way that I'm thinking and speaking.
I'm a nasty woman because I know that my body is a reflection of my lifestyle, and I seek to have the lifestyle that I want as opposed to the arbitrary body that I want.
I'm Erin Brown,
I'm Nagar Fanuni.
and today we're going to talk about is fitness feminist? But first, as I mentioned, I messed up. So let's play that game. There should be like a little theme song for like Erin said something
Dun dun
stupid.
dun.
Yeah. So on the sex episode, I was talking about my sexual experiences with women, and I used the term experimenting, and I also used the term exploring, and I used them interchangeably too when I was talking about my friends who are now identify as homosexual, who also had explored or experimented with being straight or with heterosexual sex. And so it wasn't awful, but I noticed when I was listening to it that language felt a little heteronormative. Here's a fun vocabulary word, heteronormative.
I really actually I like using that word. It makes me
Yes.
feel really smart
Yes.
and really woke.
You too can be smart and woke and use the term heteronormative, which basically just means defaulting heterosexuality. And so that's basically what I did is I talked about my heterosexual experiences in one way, and then I talked about my experiences with women as being separate from that or other than that. And it was casual, and it certainly wasn't malicious, but those are the kinds of things that inform the way that people hear us and the way that, and that's language that I grew up with. And there's all kinds of ways I can justify it. I thought about it a lot when I heard it. But it doesn't really matter. I don't feel good about it. And so I wanted to mention it. So I'm going to do better about not using heteronormative language when talking about that.
I think that, that's what we're doing here is we're just learning as we go and none of us has it all figured out.
Yeah.
I think that as long as the intention is to be inclusive and, to just get better with that language and, really sort of align with our values, like that's all we can do. I still catch myself, and it's a really small one, but I still catch myself oftentimes saying you guys. And there's different schools of thought. Some people are like, well, that's just, it's a phrase, it's a token of phrase.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything, but like it is for a reason. Like the reason why we say you guys is because male as default has long been the verbiage.
Yeah.
And as someone who speaks several languages, I can tell you that there are in the Arabic language, for example, there could be 100 women and one man in the room. And the way that you conjugate the verb is in the male plural form. You only use the female plural form if it's all women. So, there's these things that are, they're patriarchal and they're male as default. And to me, saying you guys just perpetuates that. And I cringe because I'll go through like my old YouTube videos and I'm like, hi guys, it's Nagar. And I'm like, God, I wish I would have, caught myself
sure
on
that I do that.
Whatever.
I am absolutely sure that I do that.
So
What's her name?
I've been trying to kind of change that and say
Yeah.
like, hey y'all, or hey folks. That's actually why I like y'all. Because
I like y'all.
You all. Like I'm not from the South, so I feel like I'm appropriating it a little bit, but I'm okay with that because my family's from Georgia.
Oh, I'm from
so
Kansas.
I'm like, well, yeah, you can say it.
People expect me to say y'all and things like warsh instead of wash.
No,
which
no,
I
don't say what.
Don't say warsh. Not that one.
Don't say I dear. Don't say I dear. If you say that, if you're listening and you say that, that's fine. But that's just not Erin's natural, so she's not going to say warsh on purpose.
The one that my mom says warsh, she also says milk. Like there's a Y in it. Milk.
Oh.
My mom.
I grew up with a girl who said milk.
Milk.
Like MELK. Milk.
Yeah. I don't know. Whenever somebody says something different than I say it,
Oh.
I always just assume that I'm wrong. Like, I've been saying that wrong probably forever.
Is it milk?
Is it milk?
John, my husband John makes fun of the way I say paper towels.
Oh.
He's like, no, paper towels. I'm like, paper towels. And I also say insurance.
I think that's how I say it. What do you
Some people
supposed to say?
Insurance.
Oh.
I don't know.
Insurance.
Yes. The point being that when we are speaking to a group of individuals,
Yeah.
we don't know how they identify
Yeah.
as far as gender. So even saying things like ladies and gentlemen is, can be with what we know now and how woke we are now when it comes to gender identification. Some people are gender nonconforming. So we say ladies and gentlemen, it is a little bit exclusive. So trying to say like folks, or all, and making it more inclusive. I catch myself doing it wrong all the time, and I just keep apologizing and correcting myself. That's all we can do.
Well, and we're learning. We're learning.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to say like, so we can't mess up, but what I hear from people is like, well, God, like we can't get anything right, and it's like, no, just everything we've learned has been so fucking wrong,
Yeah.
And so you can get it right, but try and care about it, and it's not actually exacerbating to come up with a new way to address people. It takes time to sort of reprogram those things that we default to. And it matters to us that we get it right. So there, I fucked up. And
thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad you did.
Thank you for hearing my share.
On my end, I have been not really feeling well. I woke up this morning feeling a little sick, and that has been happening to me pretty much every other week. I have a day where I wake up and I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go again. And I was texting with my girlfriend with whom I went to Joshua Tree recently, and she was like, I'm pretty sure this is your body's way of telling you to slow the fuck down. And it's so funny because we do that as coaches, right? Like I'm always teaching self-care and self-care rituals and, balance and moderation and all these things. And I have not been taking my own advice. And I've been staying up really late working, which is not really my norm. And sometimes working from bed, which I tell people is like the worst possible thing you can do is like working from bed and like bringing your work with you into bed. And then, really neglecting a lot of my rituals, a lot of my morning rituals, because I'll wake up and I'm like, okay, well, I got to get back to work. I went to bed with work and I'm waking up with work. Yeah. And now my body is like, you're an asshole and you need to listen to me. And I just kind of want to say that about that too. Like we don't always like, just because we're up here talking about self-care or, inclusivity, that doesn't mean that we always get it right. Like we're human beings, and I have not been on the self-care wagon. I've been off the wagon.
So what are you going to do about that, Nick? I'm a little worried
I'm putting myself out there on the podcast to hold myself accountable. I'm going to give myself hard deadlines for working. I used to just like only work until it was time to pick up Isaac. And then I was like, okay, no more work. And now I'm just basically working constantly. Deadlines are going to be reinforced, more sleep, more rest-based activity, like more yoga and hiking and less lifting weights and less like running and more aggressive activity. And more meditating and more intuitive work like tarot and journaling and stuff like that. So I just the thing is that I've gotten into a cycle, and that's the thing, right? Is like whatever we do, it's a practice. Like if like we're going to be talking about fitness today, if you've been, lifting consistently and then you take like a week off, it's always hard to get, back into it because it's like now you've taken a week off and that could turn into 2 weeks off. And then before you know it, it's been like 6 weeks and you haven't gone to the gym because you just got used to not going. So I've gotten used to staying up late, and because I stay up late, I don't wake up as early as I normally do, and I've ended up in this cycle. So I really just have to get a couple of days in a row where I'm starting to gently reverse the cycle. And I think the most important thing is that when that happens, we can't beat ourselves up. I can't sit here and be like, oh, I'm such a fuck up, I'm not following my own advice. Know, it's just we have to treat ourselves gently and, honestly, and be honest with ourselves. But I don't think that beating ourselves up is ever effective. So I'm just going to gently, use this as an opportunity to be like, okay, what can I tweak and change in my life so that I'm more rested and I can spend more time in my hammock and less time in front of my computer.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I just realized I have so many things to tell you about that are going to have to be like whole episodes. But one of them, just a tease, is I just read a book about orgasmic meditation. Do you know about this?
No, and I'm super stoked to hear about it.
It's a partner thing. And
Ooh.
it starts with 10 days, 45 minutes dedicated to your clitoris, which I can't wait to talk to you about specifically.
Because you know how I'm like,
I do.
Too much. Just too much.
Yeah. And
Lay off the clip.
this is not that. This is a totally different, gentle clitoris mapping. Anyway.
What's the book called?
It's called Slow Sex.
Okay. Well, I'll have to check that out.
I mean,
I will. I'm the type of person, like, if somebody's like, I read this book, I'm like, before you're even done talking, I've already bought it on Amazon. I'm like,
well, I wonder, I have to like get my husband's permission to talk about this as well. But I wonder if we could both do the 10 days and then discuss it. But John has to be in too.
John's always in. Wait.
Okay. Well, I want to do that. So there's the preview of that. I want to do a 10-day clitoris experiment alongside you.
Okay, so look forward to that episode, hopefully given spousal consent.
Yes.
Because always consent.
Always consent.
Always consent. Hopefully we'll have that episode up in maybe like a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Really pumped.
Well, today, I love how somehow like pussy comes up in every episode.
It should.
Even if it's like not a sexual episode at all. It always comes up. Today we're talking about is fitness feminism. And this is, feminism and fitness. Can they coexist? How can they coexist? Are they, mutually exclusive? Mm-hmm. This is a really important conversation. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way fitness is portrayed in the media, because there's not a lot of diversity in terms of how fitness is portrayed. It's not intersectional really at all. The only time you're really going to see women of color in mainstream fitness is if it's specifically like that, like it's a black magazine, or it's like, then you're going to see that, but you're not going to see a lot of that in the regular mainstream. And a lot of like the stock photos that we see, I've been reading a lot about this. There's a lot of controversy in the stock photo world. I didn't know that was like a thing. Like that's like a whole business. Is like stock photos. That's like a whole thing. Because I don't use stock photos. I always use my own photos. But I've been reading about it, and there's this whole controversy within like the stock photo industry about how we sexualize women in fitness way too much in stock photos. We over-sexualize them. We have them doing things that would never actually be done in a fitness sense. Right. Like who would ever make that face or that movement or whatever the case may be, and like just really overtly sexualizing everything and not showing any diversity in size, in color, in, even in gender identification. Like there's just so many problems with the way that it's portrayed that I think that a lot of women who identify as feminists have a hard time stomaching, fitness as a lifestyle, and how does that fit in for me? I don't know. What's your perspective?
Well, I think that's totally fair. And the big one for me is, is it okay to want to lose fat? Is it okay to want to be lean and use fitness to become lean? Or am I just striving for the ideal, which is what we were talking about a little bit earlier. And I think that question is a really important question, and the person who has to answer it is the person whose body we're talking about,
Right.
Because I do think that fitness is primarily sold to women as a means to shrink yourself and or, grow certain parts of yourself, but it's a means to make yourself more beautiful in a specific way, right? And that's different for different cultures, but it's usually a narrow, small definition of beauty that you're supposed to mold your body to fit, which may or may not work with your actual genetics. And so to what you were speaking of, then that means that for white women, there's the possibility of getting to look like the tiny white woman on the cover. And then for other people, that's not even a possibility. All kinds of intersectional issues therein. But in terms of, am I changing my body because I think someone else will like me better, or this is an ideal I've been handed, or am I doing it for myself? That's a really hard question. And I think that if it's an easy answer for you and you haven't done any exploring, then you haven't arrived there yet. You know? Like every woman I know who can approach aesthetic goals for their bodies in a healthy way has done quite a bit of digging to make sure that that's for themselves alone. So yeah, I would hazard to say that wanting to change your body in any way is somehow anti-feminist, because I would never decide that I get to determine what another woman gets to do with her body. That autonomy piece is the most important guidepost for me.
Well, and I think that the autonomy piece is absolutely a driving force of feminism, right? Like this idea that as women that we can feel powerful enough in our own skin to make our own choices, not just for like our reproductive health and, for whether or not, how we choose to show up in our lives, but for how we choose to show up physically in our bodies. Like this is all, for me, that's a huge driving force of intersectional feminism for me, is that I get to choose how I show up, and that is 100% my choice and nobody else's. So if that means for you as a feminist that, then that means I want to lose weight or I want to gain muscle or whatever the case may be, that's your choice, because it is, your body, your choice, like in all aspects of your body. But I do think it's a challenging one, right? Because we have so much mixed messaging. As you mentioned, the fitness industry, the mainstream fitness industry, at least, and quite very many of the like more niched forms of fitness are really geared towards women being smaller and or fitting into some narrow standard of beauty or what fit looks like. And those of us who are doing work in the fitness space that is more body confidence oriented, more autonomous, more like what you choose for your body is, is your choice. And that's what makes it an empowering decision.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're choosing it for your body. We certainly are fighting an uphill battle because I can speak as somebody who's been in the fitness industry for as long as I have, that it's extremely challenging to put work out into the world that isn't geared towards getting smaller or, being sexier or, get your bikini body. Like these are the messages that most of our clients or potential clients and customers are receiving.
Right.
So putting a different message out there that is antithetical to that, it takes a lot of heart-centered work to be able to do that. And it can be exhausting. Yeah. To be constantly fighting that battle and saying like, no, you don't have to do that. Like I work with a lot of women who are trying to heal their relationships with their bodies. And there's constantly this struggle of like, I feel gross. I feel disgusting. I feel, because I should be leaner. I should be this. And on an intellectual level, they're like, I know that I don't want this for myself. Like, I know that I don't want to feel this way and I don't want to talk about my body this way. And intellectually, I know that I'm just fine. But there's some more deep-rooted emotional stuff there that makes them feel as though they have to fit into some mold or some standard.
Right. And a newer to the mainstream conversation about that is that so much of that is rooted in fat phobia. So the idea that like the worst thing you can be is somebody with a large body. And, what does that say to somebody who has a large body?
Right.
So that's, oh my gosh, it's a whole bag of worms. So to start the conversation as to how we individually approach this, I think that what's most sad to me about all of this is that fitness, and for me that just means like a regular practice of moving my body on purpose, is extremely important for mental health. Like
absolutely,
there are so many benefits, and you can read 100 if you just like type out 100 benefits to a fitness routine. All the things. But the big one for me is mental health. It's so easy for your energy to get stagnant when you're not moving, and so it upsets me that it feels like that fitness and all of its benefits are taken away from people when it's only sold to a certain section of people and sold in a particular way that is fairly really off-putting. And so if you are looking into starting a fitness routine or trying to revamp the way that you approach your own body and your own fitness, like just completely tune out of the bullshit that doesn't resonate with you, the images that don't resonate with you, the fitspiration or whatever, anything that you don't want as a part of your inner dialogue, take it out. Unfollow it, remove it, so that you can actually move forward with a clear head as to what your actual plans and goals are for your life.
And the sort of rule of thumb that I use with my clients when they talk about like, seeing stuff on Instagram, for example, right? Because now we're in the age of social media where we're constantly bombarded with these images of perfection, and people are only showing us their highlight reel, and it's not just about magazines anymore. Like not everyone is buying these fitness magazines, and even the people who have decided like, oh, those fitness magazines are bullshit, I don't want what they're selling, they're still following girls on Instagram, people, I should say, not girls, people on Instagram or YouTube who show this constant image of perfection. And a lot of my clients are feeling like they could never live up to that, or like, they can't like compare themselves. And I think it's important to consider that if you're watching something, if you're following somebody on YouTube or you're following somebody on Instagram and that makes you uncomfortable, it's not about them.
Yeah.
It's not something they're doing wrong. They're projecting the image that they're projecting, and that's their prerogative. That's their life. But if it makes you feel bad, you can either stop watching it, stop following it. Like, there are so many other people you can follow that, like, it's not them. They're not doing anything wrong necessarily, right? It's not like, oh, I hate, this. I follow this girl on Instagram and she has a perfect body and all she ever shows is her perfect body and her perfect life and her perfect meals, and it makes me feel like garbage. Okay, well, then stop following that person, or use it as an opportunity to go inward and ask yourself, like, why does that bother me?
Yeah.
What about this is bothering me? What does it say about what I want for my own life or what I don't want for my own life? Like, we have so many options. And that's the thing. That's the really cool thing about social media, is that like it can make you feel like garbage if you keep following things that make you feel like garbage. But we have so many options.
Yeah.
There's so many options for what you can follow.
I made a point just in the last year to follow more women whose bodies look like mine. And it is amazing what that alone has really done for my confidence. Just like looking at how they dress themselves and all of the confidence there, it's been huge for me. And I didn't realize that I was consuming with my eyes mostly smaller bodies. And so to see more depictions of me and women who I feel like look like me has been huge for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think that women showing up in the social media space and sharing their bodies and this body diversity, both, in size, shape, color, and so on, I think that's an act of feminism. Coming out and saying, like, I don't look like the women on the magazines, but there are hundreds of thousands of people who probably look like me and want to see a depiction of themselves. Actually, one of the comments that I get from a lot of people who follow me is that, like, I like seeing your body because it reminds me of my body. Like, I'll show up, I've got really thick legs, I've got a big butt, like, and I used to be really ashamed of that and really like feeling like I wanted to be smaller because I was looking constantly at depictions of women in magazines with smaller, leaner legs, right? And as soon as I really started to own that, it was so much more empowering, and that allows me to help empower other women to own like what they've got as well. So I think that yes, like there is the mainstream fitness industry antithetical to like modern day intersectional feminism. Fuck yeah. It is. It absolutely is, but that's why I don't buy into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have to. And there are so many options now. So it's not like if you are curious about, you want to take a magazine to the gym and you want it to have a weight routine in it. There's lots of options now. It's not like there's the one, and so you have to deal with whatever is available to you. Right. Interestingly for me recently, my fitness routine has changed dramatically. I quit lifting weights. And I didn't quit, like, it's not a thing I quit. Like, I quit drinking.
You're just taking a pause and doing other things.
But I don't know how long the pause is going to be because it stopped being fun for me. And for a long time, weights was like my super love affair. I went in there and felt really powerful. I love deadlifting and squatting specifically because I can lift really heavy on those lifts. And I like intimidating men in that space, and be honest. But it just
good, right?
Makes me feel like a badass. And for several months, it just wasn't doing that for me. I was still getting like the benefit and the sort of rush of having moved, but I was not feeling motivated to go to the gym at all, and that was worrying me. So I have switched to, I do dance videos in my living room. I hike with friends. I have tons of at-home equipment, mostly from Most Fit that they sent me, and I love them. but I have like a hammer and I've got TRX stuff and so I've been doing stuff at home with my friends and mostly making it a social thing. So I get to be with girlfriends. And both of those things were primarily for me about staying out of depression. Like, okay, so I have friends coming to my house where I live, so I can't cancel. And we're going to move our bodies. Okay. It was
exactly.
Like all depression remedies for me.
Yeah.
And I lifted just this past weekend. I was at a speaking event in Canada, and I lifted at the hotel gym for the first time in months, and it was okay. So I'm thinking about going back to it. But for me, there's not usually ever an aesthetic goal to it. It's something I occasionally think about. Like, can I approach this yet? Am I at a place in my own journey with my body where I can healthfully tackle an aesthetic goal? So far, that answer has still been no.
Yeah.
And so it really, truly for me is about mental health. And it is about how much less stagnant I feel emotionally and energetically when I move my body. And
Absolutely.
That's it. That's the whole thing. I'm not looking at pictures of anybody. I'm not following a routine. And those things aren't wrong, but like that's an option. You can just move.
You can just move, to move. And actually, I think we've talked about this on the show before. Mental health and movement are so important from even like from an evolutionary standpoint, like our brains still work very much like our lizard brain is still kind of working very much like it did back before we were this evolved. So the defense mechanism, right, being fight or flight or freeze, fight and flight are both fight and flight, fight and flight, fight or flee, right? These are both physical activities.
Yeah.
And so that stress cycle of like stress stimulus, right? Which back then would have been like danger, right?
Yeah.
Fucking saber-toothed tiger or like whatever the fuck, right? Like something, right? Like in some kind of danger. So that's the stress stimulus. And then your body's like hormonal reaction, that stress cycle really only completes if we fight or flee, right? That's the completion of the stress cycle. And so from a modern day standpoint, exercise, movement, in moving your body in some way, shape, or form is so extremely important for completing that stress cycle. So I think that moving your body to prioritize your mental health, to moving your body as a means of self-care, that is absolutely a feminist act.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important to note, because if we're not taking care of ourselves, like if you consider yourself a feminist, if you consider yourself an activist in some way, shape, or form, you're somehow involved in social justice or caring for the environment or, whatever the case may be, like you have to feel mentally and emotionally and physically at your best in order to be able to show up and give your best. So I think that moving for the sake of taking care of yourself is so important because it frees up the space for you to do the work in the world that really matters to you.
Yeah.
And, I've been talking about this a lot recently, and I talked about it at the Women's Strength and Empowerment Weekend, that I really think that I'm at a point where I'm not even really talking about body love and body confidence anymore. And that was like a really big part of my message for a long time. And it kind of still is. But with where I'm at, in my political life, like in where I feel I need to show up as a woman in the world who, believes in justice and equality and fights for those things, worrying about my body and how it looks to other people, or, whether or not I'm allowed to show up based on how my body looks, or, spending energy making my body look a certain way because I'm afraid to show up as I am, or doing it for someone else or to fit into some standard is a distraction that I can't afford.
No. And other people can't afford it from us. You know what I mean? Like it's not that I don't want to be empathetic to that, because there's few things that are more like caging, suffocating than feeling like there's something just completely wrong with your appearance. However, like, to be completely frank, it's disappointing to me when that continues to be the priority. And to be honest, the way that the shrinking narrative, that whole thing is primarily a priority handed to white women, and it's primarily white women that stay stuck there. I think probably because of the images that they see. So there's still the possibility, like if you're white, then you have that box checked. So you just got to get the rest of the perfection, right? But it's disappointing. So like in my community, the day after the election, I took my daughter to school, and everyone was in tears, and everyone was just like not okay. The following Monday, I took her to school. The same group of women that are usually in there were sitting around this table talking about weight loss. And I was just like, that's how long it took. A week. It took a week. And I think that happens partially because it's a place that we keep our shame, and it's the actionable thing that always seems as available to us, you know. So regardless of what's going on around us or how stressed we are, or, you know, if we're grieving, if we're angry, then we just like internalize all of that and turn it into, how can I get perfect physically? So I don't think it's just not caring, but like, God damn it, we've got to care about something else.
And I don't know how that narrative is designed, but what I do know is that narrative of being constantly preoccupied with shrinking, with being smaller, or with now, because the standard is always changing, right? And the standard changes based on culturally where you come from, or, you know, your age, and the overarching standard. It's constantly changing. It used to be, you know, like supermodel skinny, and now it's like, well, lean but muscular, but not too muscular, but like now butts are in, right? And I'm just like, finally. For me, I'm excited because I'm like, my whole life that was like something that I always got teased for, and now it's like people are like, God damn, you know, and I'm like, I know, right? That's what I've been saying all this time. So, you know, it's like certain things like that. Like the standard is always changing, and that narrative of not being able to keep up with the standard and always feeling like, you know, like we need to be smaller, we need to be leaner, we need to be bigger here and smaller here and fit into these boxes. Like, however that narrative is designed, I'm not sure where that comes from, but what I am sure of is that the narrative keeps us small.
Yeah.
Emotionally and mentally, we might not ever get that physical smallness that so many of us are, you know, or have been at some point in our lives, like hustling for, but we're certainly staying small emotionally and mentally, and we're not showing up in our power because that narrative is really is keeping us that way. And so I truly believe that, like, deciding to say, like, I'm going to show up in my body how I want to show up is an act of defiance in today's patriarchal woke culture. But I don't think that that means that, fuck your beauty standards, I'm not going to take care of myself. And I think that's where it really, like, it gets a little dicey, right? Because we can get so fed up with this narrative that we're fed that we decide to say, you know what, I'm not going to participate in that. And, you know, fitness as a whole is designed to make me need to fit into this standard, and that's a distraction. I think that taking care of your body is absolutely essential. And I think finding ways to do that, like you mentioned, that you enjoy, that are natural for you, that, you know, bring you enjoyment on a higher level other than just aesthetics, are amazing. And I also think that aesthetics are great. If you're very clear and honest with yourself about where those aesthetic goals are coming from.
And if they're healthy for you. That's it.
Yes.
Can you do that healthily?
Can you do it healthily, and can you do it in a way that, like, it adds to your lifestyle rather than detracts from your life? And I can tell you personally, you know, we've talked about this a little bit on the show when we talked about body image, and I'm very public about my struggles with it. Back in probably like between like 2007, it was after I had my son. So between like 2007 to about 2010, there was like a 3-year run there where I got really, really, really unhealthily obsessed about my physique. And, you know, my whole life revolved around it. I got super lean. I got down to 12% body fat. I was 20 pounds lighter than I am now. I wanted to be strong, but I wanted to be small and strong. I never wanted to be big and strong. I felt constantly like I was hustling for something, because even once I got really lean, it still wasn't good enough. You know, it wasn't like I was like, okay, well, now I can just maintain this. This is great. I love this body. It's awesome. And I'm just going to maintain this, you know, and have a lifestyle that I enjoy. It always felt like I was still working towards something. I never arrived.
Right.
Ever. You know, it was still never good enough. And I did it because I thought that I needed to in order to be good enough for my partner at the time, who that's a whole other story altogether. I did it because I thought that, you know, as a trainer, as a coach in the fitness space, both online and in the gym, that I needed to look a certain way in order to be allowed to occupy that space as a trainer. And I did it because there was some really unresolved stuff. Yeah. Some really unresolved stuff that was going on there for me. And so now that was 2010. It's 7 years later. It's 7 years later from the point where I started to go, it was maybe 2010, 2011, where I started to realize like, this isn't healthy and I don't want this for myself. Yeah. Right. It's now been about 6 or 7 years, and I'm finally at a place where I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine at the gym the other day, where I was like, I think I want to lose a little body fat. And in a way that is like just for me. And it's totally, and I feel really good about it. And I feel like, what would I be willing to do? Yeah. What would I be willing to do? And I'm like, I could probably drink a little bit less. Like that would be good for me on a number of levels. I could probably, like, my main food groups don't need to be wine and candy. Like those don't have to be my major food groups. There are other options for me. And so I've just been like, tweaking a few little things here or there and just constantly checking myself. Like, is this a lifestyle change that is enjoyable for me? Is this a lifestyle change that I like, that serves me, that adds value to my life? And I feel like if I didn't ever lose any body fat, I would also just be fine and amazing. Right. And if I did, it would be because I made some intentional lifestyle choices that served me, not just from an aesthetic standpoint, but from other standpoints as well. So it's very multi-layered. It's not as simple as like, well, I'm just going to lose body fat because that's what you're supposed to do. Right. That's the problem, right? Is that's what we're fed, is that like the only goal for us as women is to be smaller. The only fitness goal that is available to us is fat loss. Right. Or, some sort of aesthetic thing. Like there are so many other options for that. And so for me, I'm just like, okay, like I'm at a place in my life, 7 years of healing. To where I can finally say with the utmost confidence that I love my body and I'm comfortable in it and I'm confident in it just as it is. But from an aesthetic standpoint, I would like to lose a little bit just because there are certain types of clothing that I like that I'm like aesthetically, I'd like to wear that. And I think I would like the way that it looked better with just a little bit less body fat in that outfit. You know what I mean? Like, really, it's very curious and open, and I'm just like, but I'm also happy with the way I am now. So it's for each individual woman. It's a questioning process, an inquiry process of your own. Yeah, that's going to be totally individual.
Well, and the big thing, you mentioned it at the very beginning as to why you were a nasty woman, but is like, what's it worth to you? Anything that you want to do, like I think I'd really enjoy playing hockey. Here's an example that's super benign, right? I like the idea of it. I'm not very good on ice skates. I'd like to be. It's aggressive. I like everything about the idea of playing hockey. Playing hockey is not really easily accessible to me in Kansas. I would probably have to get a lot of gear. I don't know how to skate. And so there's like all of this stuff that would go into me playing hockey. And so the amount that I'm interested in hockey and how much work I would have to do to actually play hockey doesn't really line up for me. Personally. So approach fitness that way, like if you want to, like, I would love to have big, intimidating arms. And currently I'm not willing to do the things that are required to have big, intimidating arms. And I have friends who have like superhero bodies who spend hours and hours and hours a week on it. And it's their passion, and that's wonderful, and I think sometimes we try and take away from those women in the way that we talk about body image on the other side of things. And it's like, no, that's like literally their passion. It's their lifestyle. That's their job. And that's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that either. Something you said earlier I wanted to mention because it comes up a lot in body positive spaces as a negative thing to say. And I don't think you meant it in a negative way is that you also it shouldn't be fuck you, so I'm not going to take care of myself. And that alone is a perfectly fine statement. The trouble is that that statement is usually attached to a large body without any knowledge of their actual health.
We don't know. That we don't know. And we do that, right? Like as a society, we have the habit of judging people's fitness based on how they look. And fit looks different on everyone.
Yeah.
We don't know that a person is unhealthy simply because they have a larger body. We don't fucking know that. We don't know what that person is doing. I find it really interesting. There are a lot of people in the, in social media that show up with larger bodies, and they do get a lot of comments of like, well, why don't you just exercise? Well, why don't you just eat healthy? Like from people, from fucking trolls and shit. Like it happens, right? And it's like, you don't fucking know what that person is doing with their life. You don't know their life.
Yeah.
And even if they weren't, that's none of your fucking business. Like
it's not a moral issue.
Right.
Like it's not how I collect friends. It's not any of my business. It doesn't make them a good or bad person. There are really fit people who look what we expect fit to look like, who are shit people. Well, so that's not doing it either.
And my experience is the perfect example. I don't consider myself a shit person, but my experience is the perfect example of, when I was super lean and shredded, and I was like the picture of like, I was a fitness model.
Yeah.
I was so disempowered. And it's not to say that I was disempowered because I was lean. And I think this is a problem that we associate with on either end of the spectrum.
Right.
Like that the body is I was miserable because I was lean. There are tons of people who are lean and, they look like fitness models and they fucking love their lives. Yeah. Like, we can't say that like the pursuit of leanness is always miserable for everyone, but we also can't judge how a person shows up in their body and say that means something. That generally has like a blanket statement. I was a very lean person and I was very unhappy. I was very disempowered. For me, I wasn't doing it for me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't doing it for my mental health, for my emotional health, for my spiritual health. I was hustling for my worthiness. Mm-hmm. And my body was a reflection of my lifestyle, but not in a way that was rooted in any kind of love or any kind of power. Yeah. It was very much rooted in like a lack of worthiness. And so we have to be really careful about making those judgments, any kind of judgments in general. Mm-hmm. Period. But making those judgments about fitness, I think this is a space in the world that fitness, particularly, where we have the tendency to make judgments about people's lifestyles just by looking at them.
Yeah.
And we have to get out of that habit.
Yeah. I actually, I've been thinking a lot about my body recently. My hot bod.
I think about your body quite a bit too, actually.
I really like my body as it is. And that's really important to me always. But I notice that I'm bigger now than I have been in a lot of years. And I prefer the way I'm treated in this body. And I'm not sure what to make of that. And I sort of wonder if that is an unconscious or subconscious reason that I've been gaining weight. Because this stuff is always attached to emotions as well. For me, I'll just speak to my own narrative. But I find that women are less likely to see themselves as being in competition with me. So they're nicer to me. So I deal
because you show up so boldly and so powerfully.
But in a big body.
Your spirit and
mm-hmm. In a big body. I deal with less bullshit from women. I am more likely to be underestimated, and I prefer that. And men leave me alone more frequently. Yeah. And all of those things are like top notch for me. Yeah. And so there's a bit of a fuck you in my body, and I don't like that. So what I'm doing, instead of exploring if I want to be bigger or smaller or what lifestyle things I should address, I'm always addressing lifestyle things, but usually from a health perspective, how I feel. Mm-hmm. But in terms of that, rather than explore the size of my body, I'm just exploring, like, can I release the fuck you? And then see what happens.
And then see, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm addressing the actual thing and not my body and as an experiment. Yes. Yeah.
And I do think that is like the body always taking center stage is the main issue with a lot of people when they're like, well, it gets dicey and it's a little shady, feminism and fitness, and how do those things coexist, is that the way that our bodies look and the way that we show up physically from an aesthetic standpoint is too much of the focus. And so we have to, so learning how to like separate from that and see how those things can coexist is challenging for many of us who are like, we want to show up powerfully and we don't want to feel as though we're trying to fit into somebody else's standards. I personally feel more powerful in my body than I ever have. And this is the biggest I've ever been, both just bigger, like whether it's muscle or body fat or whatever, like this is the biggest outside of pregnancy that I've ever been. And I feel like really good about it. And I also wouldn't feel like, I don't look at myself and go, I want to be smaller. Which is huge for me to like look at pictures of myself and objectively say like, that's the biggest I've ever been, period. And end of the statement. Like there's no qualifying statement there. It's just an awareness. And to also say like, I would be okay with losing. I would also be okay with not losing. And I'm not going to show up differently. That's the big thing for me, is that I'm going to show up like, if I decide to aesthetically change my body in some way, it's not going to be an if-then scenario. It's not like, if I can change my body aesthetically, then I can show up in this way. I'm going to just keep showing up the way I'm showing up, regardless of how my body changes. For me personally, again, speaking to my own narrative, for me personally, that's been the ballast. That's been my North Star, is always asking myself, like, am I showing up like in the world the way that I want to show up, no matter how my body looks aesthetically, whether I'm leaner, whether I'm bigger, whatever the case may be. I'm going to wear my thong bikinis no matter what. Like, I'm the biggest I've ever been and I'm wearing them now. And if I lose 10 pounds, I'll still just keep showing up the same way. Like, I'm not going to show up differently based on how my body looks. And I think that for me, that's where I know, okay, well, if I do change my body aesthetically, I'm doing it for me, because it's not going to change the way that I show up. It's just going to be a different look. And that's not even going to be permanent. That's the big thing for me, is like, it's just a different look for now.
Right. So how do you approach working out? Why do you do it?
Okay. So I honestly, number one, it's hugely mental health for me. I suffer from really high anxiety, and I manage that with exercise, with pot, and with meditation and intuitive practices, right? And so managing my anxiety is the most important thing for me. It's number one, because if I'm heavily anxious, I can't show up in my business. I can't show up in my work. I'm like not having good relationships with my family members because I'm like at a high anxiety level. I don't want to show up that way in my life. It's not good for me or for anyone. So for me, that's always the most important thing. And exercise is a major, major factor there. I am not currently following a program, and that's intentional. That's by design. I didn't enjoy the rigidity that I felt constantly following a program. It triggered a lot of the body image issues, feeling that like rigidity of programming. And programs are amazing. I write them and I sell them for a living. Like, programming is great. But it's also okay to say, like, for me, for right now, I'm not going to follow a program. I'm starting to feel a little bit like I might want to change that, because it's been several years that I haven't been following a strict program. But I've just been doing it intuitively. I show up at the gym and I'm like, what does my body feel like doing today? What have I maybe not done in a while that I'd like to practice? And so for me, fitness is really fun. I like moving my body in ways that are interesting. I like going, oh, shit, I didn't know I could do that. Or, this like empowering feeling. And I like working out with friends, which is huge for me, because as an introvert, I don't get a lot of social activity because I don't want a lot of social activity. And fitness is the one place that I feel really comfortable being social, and I feel really empowered being social in a fitness space. And so for me, honestly, it's mostly it's very social, and it's also very much feeling powerful in my body by like just doing the things I can do.
Yeah. Well, and we both mentioned mental health, and as a thinking of all of the listeners and our responsibility as people talking on a microphone. Obviously, that's not a prescription for anyone. We know that movement practices are good for most mental health issues, and we know that actually the best possible thing you can do, even just for a bad mood, is a 10-minute walk, like science says. And your individual needs regarding your mental health are 100% individual to you.
Yep.
But for me, I was actually so pissed when I started working out regularly and noticed how big of a difference it made in my mental health, because that was not something that was talked about in all the health classes I ever went to. Like I only knew that fitness was for weight loss. That was the only like narrative I was handed about that. And then like, you know, like you get the food pyramid and you're supposed to have so many servings of fruits and vegetables and so many minutes of movement a day. And it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah. Sure. My mom would say that. But I didn't know that it would like make such a dramatic difference in my state of mind and my mood and my ability to self-govern. Like I just feel so much more in control of my life when I move my body deliberately.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. I do. And for me, I feel I enjoy feeling more capable. That's a big part of why I continue to lift. And I do so again, like, and, you know, intuitively, I change it up. I like feeling strong because I like feeling capable. I was a single mom for a long time and I had to do a lot of things myself. And, you know, whether or not like gender roles, like I'm not a fan of gender roles. I'm a huge fan of defying gender roles. I'm a huge fan of like everybody doing what they do best and helping each other out despite whatever the, you know, the gender roles might be. But I had to do all the roles. Yeah. Because I was a single mom. So I remember actually, I vividly remember this. My son had outgrown his toddler bed. It was like crib turned toddler bed, right? Like you take down the sides and turns into this like little tiny toddler bed. And he had outgrown it and I bought him a twin bed and I went to IKEA. I bought him a twin bed, loaded it in the car, and then I got to the house and I was like, how am I going to get this fucking thing, like the mattress? Like, how am I going to get this mattress into the apartment, like up and down the stairs and like, you know, walking it from the car. And it wasn't heavy by any means. It's just a mattress, but it's a twin mattress, the biggest mattress he'd ever had. So I was like, okay, well, I remember having this, and it took a little bit of like playing around, and I had to take a lot of breaks because it was like, you know, my arms are only so long, and I was like, how do I get the, you know, and I remember having this moment where I was just like, I can do this. I can do this myself. I don't need someone else to help me do this physically because I'm physically capable because I exercise, whatever that means. You know, to me, like strong isn't like, it's not a thing that we have to aspire to or compare ourselves to, because that's just another way that we can end up in these comparison roles, right? Like, well, I'm not as strong as that person, or this is strength and I'm, you know, I'm only here. Like I hear this a lot from women where they're just like, well, I can only do one pull up. It's not that big of a deal. Or I deadlifted my body weight, which I know isn't really that strong, but it's strong for me. And, you know, we get all of this and I'm just like, strength is like, you get to choose what strong means.
Right. It's totally relative.
Yes, it's so relative. And so whatever you're doing with your body, like moving it in a way that like you're exploring your body and you know how to kind of like move in space in a way because you're doing it more intentionally. And so for me, it was just like, I can do this because I exercise, whatever that means, because I'm strong, whatever that means. Yeah. I'm strong for me.
And those considerations will be different based on, you know, ability, all kinds of things. My moment like that, I was on a hike with my husband and my father-in-law and Lola and I think maybe one of his sisters or both of them. I don't know. We were all on this hike and they got tired, and particularly Lola got really tired and just like wasn't going to be able to hack it. And so we were approaching the road, but our car was a couple miles behind us. And so I took the keys and ran back to the car and picked them up. And I remember just feeling like, and I hadn't ran for a long time. It wasn't a regular part of my practice, but I can always run a couple miles. I don't necessarily choose to run a couple miles, but I know that I can always run a couple miles.
You can, and you'll live to tell the tale.
Yes, I move enough, and I have moved enough that that's always a possibility for me, and that feels good. You know, I know a woman, or actually a friend of mine's friend, so I don't know her. This chick I don't know at all, that I've heard about, that I'm sure is great because I'm going to reference her right now. Yeah, she exists. She she trains to run between her house and her kids' school. And I think it's like 5 miles or something. But she always, like, in an emergency, she wants to know that she could theoretically run to her kids.
I love that.
So, like, it's also just very functional to make sure that within the limitations of your own body that you have the best ability to move and move things and, you know, whatever, like, just functionally use your body to the best that you have available to you, or to, you know, the best that you're willing to do.
I always want to be able to I always want to have the ability to say yes if I want to say yes. Yeah. So like to clarify that, like my life philosophy is that I want to always be empowered to say fuck it. Whether it's fuck it, I'm in, or fuck it, I'm out. Yeah. Like that's my life philosophy. Like I actually have a necklace. I'm not wearing it right now, but I usually wear it that says fuck it in like tiny, tiny, tiny little letters. It's tiny. Like you have to like look really close to it. It's like a little bar. And I wear it all the time because like that's my like fuck it, you know? Yeah. Like for me, if I can say fuck it, yes or no, that directly corresponds to how happy and empowered I am in my life. Mm-hmm. And if I want to say yes to something, if I want to be like, I really want to do that, I want to be able to physically say like, I can do that. Yeah. You know, like if I want to do it, like I love hiking, and I want to be able to like say yes to like, if somebody was like, dude, this hike is fucking dope. You gotta like boulder and there's this amazing view and it's 13 miles. Yeah. I want to be able to be like, fuck yeah, I'm in. I don't know if I can hike 13 miles. I've never done it before, but like, I feel confident that like, I'll figure out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's reasonable. I'll figure it out. Like, you know, whatever the case may be. Like, I want to be down for whatever if I want to do it. Like, if it's a thing that I actually want for my life. And so that's really why exercise is important to me, other than from a mental health standpoint, is because I want to be able to be like, hell yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I don't want to like pull a muscle throwing a football on the beach, because I have done that. Oh. That's the thing I have done. And I don't want that to be my life. Yeah. For me, I don't want that. So that's kind of how I approach fitness.
Do you have any tips for making something a regular practice if it's new for someone?
Yeah. I mean, accountability is huge. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to make fitness or movement, intentional movement in some way, a regular practice, and it's new for you and you're having a hard time committing, having like a person that you do it with and holding each other accountable is huge. Being a part of a gym where like the social atmosphere is actually positive and welcoming and inclusive is one option for that. Or having a friend that you meet for coffee in the morning and you go walk in your neighborhood, you know, like having that accountability factor is huge. And I actually think that's doubly important because you get the movement aspect of it and you also get the social connection part of it, which is very important. And also like not overcommitting, which I think is something that women in particular tend to like say like, okay, well, you know, this is the week, like it's me, you know, it's the beginning of the year. It's January 1st. Like I'm going to cook all my meals on Sunday. I'm going to go to the gym for 2 hours every day. And we overcommit and we make it too big of a thing. And having those micro intentions, I think is a little bit more doable and it allows you to build. So coming in and being like, you know, my intention is to move every day, whatever that means. Yeah. So some days that's just a 2-mile walk on the beach with my dogs. Other days it's 15 minutes of yoga. Other days it's I go to the gym and I lift. And some days it's all 3 of those things in one day. You know, so it just depends. But my intention isn't, I'm not like, I have to do this, I have to do that. My intention is I want to move my body every day in the way that it wants to move that day. Yeah. How about you?
That's good. When I was getting started, I committed to 5 days a week, 20 minutes of movement. And I often did more than that, but I needed it to be kind of concrete so I would know what I was sticking to begin with. And now it's more like you. It's like I went for a walk or I did some stretching or I crushed like a strength training workout with friends, or I did all three of those things.
Right.
So it's easy. And sometimes it is just stretching, you know, but making sure that I'm moving my body and keeping my energy is what I'm looking at from being stagnant. But when I started, it was 20 minutes a day. And sometimes that meant going into my bedroom after I put my daughter down for bed, looking at the clock, and then just fucking moving around until 20 minutes was up. Which was like ridiculous, but I was like, I'd jumping jacks, and then that would get tired. So then I'd like twist, but I was just literally trying to think of any move. Yeah, just move.
Just move. Yeah.
But I didn't. I was really good at that, and that got me in the practice. And now the habit is there, and my body craves it. Like it gets achy. You know, like when you're hungry, like my body gets hungry for movement, and I'm able to honor and acknowledge that. I can't go without it now that I'm used to it.
Well, I think that's a really big thing to consider when we're talking about like, is fitness, you know, does it align with our intersectional feminist values? Is that, you know, there's a lot of pressure, not just to look a certain way, but this pressure for perfection, right? So if you're going to commit to a fitness regimen, this is what you have to do. Right. And you know, and if you're not getting in an hour of exercise a day, like there's this sort of mentality of like that all or nothing, right? Like, well, I'm not going to do an hour, so fuck it, I'm just not going to do anything. Right. Because, you know, we've been told that like this is the standard. And I tell people like, if all you have is 5 minutes, like take fucking 5 minutes. Like 5 minutes is great. 5 minutes is better than nothing. And it will start to, like you said, build that habit where your body starts to crave it. And 5 minutes turns to 10 minutes and 10 minutes turns to 15. And you just become like more aware of how much your body enjoys moving.
Yeah. And the huge thing for me, I just keep saying, but like it is really easy for me to become in a place where I feel energetically paralyzed, you know? Where like someone has said something negative about me, or I've screwed up in some way, or, you know, I'm fighting with my husband, whatever it is, there's something that is frustrating to me that I can't just fix. I can't turn it off. I can't, you know, and so then my go-to is to just like ruminate in that place until it becomes this like fortress of shit piled on me, you know? And the best way out is moving, you know, when I'm my body worker often says sometimes for your spirit to move, your body has to move. And so it alleviates things a little bit. Fresh air is great for that. Getting a little vitamin D. I saw you were getting some D the other day.
I would love to get the D.
But all of that is so good for my energy, and so then I'm not constantly in this like I'm a terrible person, I should just feel bad about myself, victim martyr space.
Yeah, it is. It's so clarifying.
So I'm not a shitty person.
Yes, you're not a shitty person. I really think that I'm of the school of thought that like anything can be a form of meditation. And I think that movement is absolutely in that category. You know, that's actually why I created the Wildfire Yoga program, because there was this like pressure around like yoga, like people who want to do yoga, but they're just like, I don't want to go to an hour and a half class, or like, I don't have those resources, you know. That's huge. And I think that that's a really important thing that we have to consider when we talk about fitness and intersectional feminism, like, and just intersectionality in general. Like, resources are huge. And if we're being told that like the only way to be fit is to like go to an hour and a half, like bougie ass yoga studio, which, hey, that's great if that's what you like. And if you have the resources for that, but not everybody does. And like, you got to go to a gym that has like full equipment, you know, and you have to like have access to all these things, and you have to have access to like all these types of food and, you know, things that you might not have access to. And I think that our job in this space, and I've taken this on really as my job as a coach in the fitness space, is to make things more accessible for people, because we don't know what the resources are. And I know personally that as somebody who loves yoga, I don't have the time or the energy or the space to get to a yoga studio 3 times a week and spend an hour and a half in that class. And by 30 minutes into that class, I'm starting to feel like I have other shit I need to be doing right now. And like, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I have dogs, and I have a kid, and I have a business, and I have a husband, and I have a house, and I have a life, and like I have other things, and I'm just like, I can't do that. It's expensive. depending on where you live, it might not be something that's even available to you. And so I created that program because I was like, hey, all you need is 5 minutes. You don't even, and maybe a yoga mat. And that's even optional because maybe you can just go do this in the grass or, like, I don't know, somewhere that you're not going to slip. And you can do it in your living room. You can do it in your underwear. You don't have to own fancy yoga pants.
Yeah.
You don't have to show up and like looking super cute and perfect in your adorable fitness clothes, which great. I love adorable fitness clothes. I buy them for photo shoots. Like it's pretty much it. Because if I wear them to my gym, they're going to be destroyed. But I buy them for photo shoots and then I wear them like as athleisure. I'm like, oh, these are my cute outfits. But like not everybody has access to that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm fully, and I'm sensitive to that and I'm aware of it and I want to be a part of that solution.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to have all that. You can just dance around in your living room in your underwear. Like that is okay. All of that is okay. So I think taking that pressure off makes fitness more accessible for everyone because it's not only you don't have to look a certain way. Fitness is not to necessarily like fitness and end game being this is the standard. Like fitness doesn't have to be to get to this body type that might not be accessible for you, but it also doesn't have to look a certain way. The way that you do fitness for you doesn't have to look any way. There's no like these are the boxes, this is acceptable fitness.
Right. And so I think if you're concerned about your current fitness routine and whether or not it is in alignment with your values, if you're approaching it in a healthy way, then I would just refocus your energy on what aspects of it you like and focus on enjoying it while exploring the other stuff. And if you don't like anything about your current fitness routine, do some different shit.
Yeah.
And the best resource, if you're listening to this, then you probably have access to YouTube. YouTube is full of free fitness stuff.
I got a lot of it on my YouTube channel. Yeah, but just beware. I'm going to be like, hey guys, it's Sagar.
Sorry.
And I'm sorry. What I really meant was, hey folks. Men, women,
hello everyone,
transgender individuals, and gender nonconforming individuals. This is for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, so the question being, is fitness feminist? Can those things coexist? I think the answer is it depends.
Yeah. That's a good question for you to answer yourself.
Yeah. You know, but if it's important to you that your values align with the way that you live your life, your values and the way that you see the world and the way that you show up in your body, whatever you do, if it's important to you that those things align, and if you consider yourself an intersectional feminist and you want that to coexist with your fitness routine, that's a question for you to answer. That's some inquiry for you to have, and so that you can figure it out for yourself, because the really cool thing about all of this is that you get to co-create your life.
Yeah.
You're constantly co-creating your life with the universe. Like you get to be a part of that. It's not happening to you. It's not, something that you don't have a choice in. Like you get to show up and say, this is how I'm going to do fitness.
Yeah.
Because this is the way that it aligns with my values, both within the world and how I want to show up in my body. And that's your autonomous choice.
Yeah. And so my hope as a person who that is so beneficial to is that if that has always been something that turns you off, that you might explore it in a new way. And for me right now, that means not at a gym. Part of it too was that I was really tired of men at the gym making comments about what I was doing and how I was looking. Even always complimentary even, but even that I was just like, I don't even want to be in this space.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a concern. That is a concern for a lot of people, particularly for women or people who identify as women. That is a huge concern, because it's like, I want to be able to show up in this space and just do my thing.
I want to be left the fuck alone.
I just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Like there was that whole article, and we should probably talk about this independently on an episode, but it was like how to talk to a woman wearing headphones.
Oh yeah.
And it was like that dating coach who was like teaching men how to like start a conversation with a woman wearing headphones. The answer to that question, or to the answer to that statement, by the way, is don't.
Like, well, what is she on fire? Like, is there something that she needs?
I know, but you're on fire. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Like that might be in emergency scenarios. Do the thing you would do in an emergency. Otherwise, she doesn't fucking want to talk to you.
think that there's this whole other concept of like wanting to show up in the world and like be in the world, but like also be left alone,
Yeah.
and like you to be able to do that. And I'm, thankfully I work out in a place where, I go to a gym where community is huge. And so men and women alike and, all folks are working out side by side and everybody's supporting each other and encouraging each other. And it's like nobody feels like nobody's like nobody is like treated differently based on gender. Everyone is treated really equally for the most part, and that it's a very, very magical place. But I'm very sensitive to the fact that most people don't have that experience, and it's a very real concern for women in particular showing up in a gym and feeling like men are either sexualizing me or they are they're surprised by the fact that a woman is lifting, so they want to comment on it, or coming up and saying like that, do you need help with that, assuming that you can't lift it, or making a comment like, be careful not to lift too heavy, you'll get too bulky. Yeah. There's so many different ways that you're approached, and being able to show up in that space and just own your space and your body and just do your thing. Yeah. After a time, it becomes exhausting.
It is exhausting. And I can certainly hold my own and I like to hand my discomfort at those comments back to the person, and that can even be fun. But that's not self-care time for me. Is like telling some dude the what's what when he wants to tell me I'm looking better, whatever the fuck that means.
I don't need you to like exert your like power and your presence on me. Like I don't need you to just like come into my experience of life without being invited.
Yeah, and in an effort to let go of the fuck you I was talking about, I'm like, I'm just gonna be at home. Yeah, nobody's fucking with me at home. My friends don't come over and fuck with me.
No. That's a choice that you can make, right? So like if that's an experience that you're having to where you're like, everybody's fucking with me at the gym, like exercise isn't the problem. It's that space that isn't working for you.
Yeah.
So find another space, honestly. And I hear this from a lot of people. They're like, I'm having a hard time finding a gym where I feel comfortable, or, a gym where I can make friends and I feel like inclusivity. Like this is a real concern. For women of color, for people with various limited abilities. Like this is a real thing. And what I can say is that those places do exist. You can find a space where you feel accepted and comfortable and powerful in your skin. And you can also make the decision to create those spaces for yourself.
Yeah, even if that just means with what little square footage you might have in your living room. But create the space and time in your life in a way that makes sense and is available to you in your life. And it doesn't have to look like anybody else's, and it doesn't have to be based on anybody else's goals or ideas about that, but based on what you want for your life. And I think we both hope, because fitness has been so helpful for both of us, that you explore that in a way that's really healthy for you, so that you can also enjoy the benefits of it. And that's it.
I want you to move because I know that movement is like so fucking powerful for so many different reasons. And I know that it's just going to make you feel good in your body and in your life. But I want you to do it in a way that is authentic to you and, aligns with your resources and your values and all of those things. But at the end of the day, like movement is for you. So thank you for joining us on this conversation today. And we would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us at nastywomenradio@gmail.com. That is currently how you can get in touch with us. So if you've got questions or concerns or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. And we'd also love if you would take a moment to rate and review the show and share the show. Erin and I do this show as a labor of absolute love, and it would really help us to provide more for you if we are rated and reviewed and shared.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.